Gentlemen, time's expired. Or yielded back. Do any other members seek? Mr. Connolly?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The gentleman from South Carolina just implied, more than implied, that that there's evidence the President of the United States committed high crimes and misdemeanors. Her report finds otherwise. He, in fact, found no grounds for proceeding. That may be an unpleasant fact, but it is a fact. In addition, there is no committee in this Congress that has found the President of the United States guilty of high crimes or misdemeanors, nor is the President currently the subject of the charge that he is guilty of high crimes and misdemeanors. So if we're going to take care in invoking President's names and characterizing them, their circumstances, or their legal standing, let's at least stick to the facts. I yield back.
No, Mr.
Will the gentleman yield?
I'm sorry. I yield first to the ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Connolly. And I want to further clarify this issue for our colleague, because I did have some familiarity with these contempt motions. Now, when the January 6th committee, whose legality and constitutionality was repeatedly upheld by the D.C. Circuit and no court ever rejected it, issued subpoenas and requests to testify, hundreds of people cooperated. More than 900 people did what the vast majority of Americans do. You get a subpoena, you go, and you testify. If you get a subpoena for documents, you turn over the documents. There was a tiny handful of people who blew off the subpoenas. Some of them claimed to be invoking executive privilege even when Donald Trump didn't invoke executive privilege. Some of them were not even working for the government when they purported to invoke executive privilege, and they were referred for contempt motions and voted that way, and then prosecutions were brought only against those people who categorically didn't participate. I'll give you an example of someone who kind of did the hokey pokey. He was sort of in and sort of out, and that was Paul Manafort. And he participated some and then some not. There were some other witnesses who were kind of, Mark Meadows, that's who I'm thinking of. Mark Meadows is the one who turned over a whole bunch of stuff, and then we understand Donald Trump wasn't pleased and he stopped cooperating, but he was never held for contempt because he had at least partially complied, okay? So now you're talking about the Attorney General of the United States who's invoked executive privilege for one very small part of the overall subpoena, but has materially, substantially, and overwhelmingly complied in this case by turning over the entire document that was subpoenaed, which was the president's testimony. And now people are talking about invoking the inherent power of contempt of Congress, which hasn't been used in more than a century, to go and arrest him because you didn't get the audio tape.
Will the gentleman yield, please?
For a quick question, sure.
Actually, it's my time.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I yield to the ranking member.
Thank you. All right, well, just to complete I'll just complete my point, and I'll yield back to the very distinguished gentleman from Virginia. So I think that our colleagues should really think about what they're talking about here. You understand that when he was president, Donald Trump invoked executive privilege and cut off all cooperation with legislative committees in more than 100 cases. You're saying he could have been arrested 100 times and thrown into jail. And don't bury your faces in your phones. I mean, I just want you to follow the principle of your argument that Congress can throw anyone in jail if
Will
there's...
the gentleman yield?
Well, I'll yield back to my distinguished...
I would yield to the gentlelady, yes.
I think the whole point of this, and this is not tit for tat, this is a very serious thing in that Congress used to be respected, and we are no longer respected because people do not respect our authority. And so the inherent contempt clause, I'm not hoping that he's thrown in jail. What I'm saying is that he's violated a law, something that we have as a privilege, and as a result of that, any other American would be in trouble or in jail because of it. And so,
reclaiming my time, I want the gentlelady to know that on the principle of inherent contempt, I actually agree. I believe that the courts are too slow in enforcing congressional subpoenas, and therefore the work of the legislative body is impeded. But that begs the question of whether there are serious grounds in which to bring a contempt citation. And if we're going to use that power, we'd better use it very carefully and thoughtfully, and I do not believe this proceeding against Merrick Garland meets that criteria. But thank you for the point.
Gentlemen, time's expired. Chair now recognizes Mr. Jordan for 5 minutes.
I think the chair, independent and impartial. That's what they told us.